In a village nestled deep within the heart of an African savanna, where the grasses swayed like whispers of ancient spirits, there lived a woman named Zobeida. She was neither old nor young, neither rich nor poor, but she had the kind of beauty that held mystery, like the moon hiding behind a veil of clouds. Her eyes held a storm, her laugh carried 1,000 untold stories, but her heart bore a sorrow so profound that not even time could erode it. Zobeida was no stranger to grief. She had lost her husband to a sudden fever, her son to a drought that cracked the earth open, and her daughter to an illness no healer could cure. Life had been merciless, yet Zobeida endured. The villagers often whispered that she had been cursed, but Zobeida knew otherwise. She believed she had been forgotten by the gods, left to wander a life of pain while others were embraced by death's comforting arms. One night, when the moon hung low and red, Zobeida made her decision. She could no longer endure a life where every step felt like a thorn digging into her soul. She would seek death himself. If death would not come to her, she would go to him and ask for her release. The journey to find death was no simple task. The elders of the village spoke of the spirit forest, a place where the living and the dead danced on the edge of reality. They said only the brave or the desperate dared to enter. Zobeida, with nothing left to lose, wrapped herself in a simple cloth, took a gourd of water, and began her journey under the shadow of the moon. The forest was alive in ways that defied nature. Trees whispered secrets in languages she couldn't understand. The ground pulsed beneath her feet as though the earth itself had a heartbeat. Eyes glowed from the darkness, watching her every move, but none dared to stop her. Zobeida's resolve was unshakable, her sorrow a shield against the fear that would have broken others. After what felt like days, Zobeida reached the center of the forest. There, beneath an ancient baobab tree whose roots twisted like the veins of the earth, sat a figure cloaked in shadows. His presence was as heavy as the air before a storm, his face obscured by the hood of his robe. This was Death, the being she had sought. "Why have you come?" Death's voice was neither cruel nor kind. It was a sound that echoed deep in the bones, a melody of endings. Zobeida knelt before him, her voice steady. "I have come to ask for my release. Take me, for I have no more to give to this life." Death studied her in silence for a long moment. Then he spoke, his tone laced with something that might have been amusement. "You ask for death as though it is a gift to borrow, but life and death are not so easily exchanged. Why should I take you, Zobeida, when there are others who cling to life yet must leave it behind?" Zobeida met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. "Because I have nothing left. My family is gone. My heart is hollow. I am not living, only existing. What use is my life to the world?" Death tilted his head, considering her words. "Very well," he said at last, "but I will not take you without a bargain. I will let you borrow death, to hold it in your hands, to feel its weight. If after 3 days, you still wish for me to take you, I will grant your request. But if you change your mind, there will be a price to pay." Zobeida did not hesitate. "I accept." Death extended his hand, and in it was a small black stone that pulsed faintly with light. "This is death," he said. "Hold it close, and you will walk unseen among the living. You will hear their secrets, feel their pain, and know the weight of what you seek. Return to me in 3 days with your answer." As soon as the stone touched Zobeida's palm, a chill swept through her body, and the world around her shifted. She looked down at her hands. They were translucent, like smoke. The sounds of the forest grew distant, muffled, as though she stood on the edge of reality itself. Her journey had just begun, but Zobeida would soon learn that borrowing death was not as simple as she had imagined. As Zobeida stepped back into the world of the living, she quickly realized the power of the stone death had given her. She walked through her village and noticed, invisible as the wind, a ghost among the people she had once known. At first, she was relieved. There was no one to pity her, no one to remind her of the family she had lost. But as the hours passed, she began to see the truth of what it meant to exist in the shadow of life. She wandered to the market square, where voices rang out in a cacophony of bartering and gossip. There, she saw Miriam, her childhood friend, selling baskets woven from palm fronds. Zobeida lingered, watching as Miriam's smile faltered when a wealthy merchant dismissed her work as worthless. Zobeida had never noticed how worn Miriam's hands were, how her shoulders slumped under the weight of years of struggle. "She is struggling too," Zobeida murmured to herself, moving on. Zobeida found herself outside the blacksmith's hut. Inside, Mosi, a young apprentice, was hammering away at a blade. His face was smeared with soot, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Yet, when the blacksmith berated him for his sloppy work, Mosi said nothing. Zubaida could see the frustration bubbling beneath his skin, but she could also see the fear that kept him silent. Even the young carry burdens, she whispered. As the day wore on, Zubaida visited more places, saw more faces. She saw the widow who cried alone at night, clutching a scarf that had belonged to her husband. She saw the farmer who toiled from dawn to dusk, his hands blistered and his back bent, only to watch his crops wither under the sun's unrelenting heat. She saw children laughing as they played, their joy, a rare flicker of light in a world that seemed to grow darker with each passing moment. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, Zubaida's heart was heavier than ever. She returned to the outskirts of the village and sat beneath an acacia tree, staring at the black stone in her hand. Its faint light pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, as though it were alive. "Death," she said aloud, her voice trembling. "You told me I would feel the weight of what I seek. But what is this weight? Is it the pain of others, or is it my own sorrow reflected back at me?" There was no answer, only the rustle of leaves in the night breeze. The second day dawned, and Zubaida decided to venture beyond the village. She wandered through fields and forests, across rivers and rocky plains. Along the way, she encountered travelers, each carrying their own burdens. She saw a mother clutching a sick child as she begged for medicine at a roadside stall. She saw a man walking alone, his face lined with regret, muttering apologies to no one. She saw an elderly woman kneeling in a field, planting seeds with hands that trembled from age and fatigue. Everywhere she went, Zubaida saw suffering, but she also saw resilience. She saw the way the mother refused to give up on her child, the way the man continued his journey despite his guilt, the way the elderly woman whispered prayers of hope as she worked the soil. By the end of the second day, Zubaida began to question her decision. Had she truly been forgotten by the gods? Or had she simply closed her heart to the beauty that still lingered amidst the pain? On the third day, Zubaida returned to the spirit forest. She walked slowly, her mind a storm of thoughts. When she reached the ancient baobab tree, Death was waiting for her, his shadowy form as still as the grave. "Have you come to surrender the stone?" Death asked, his voice as cold as the wind that howled through the forest. Zubaida held up the stone, its light dimmer now, as though it had absorbed her doubts. "I have seen what I needed to see," she said. "I thought I was alone in my pain, but I was wrong. Everyone carries a burden. Everyone suffers. But they continue to live, to fight, to hope." Death tilted his head, his hood obscuring whatever expression he might have worn. "And what is your decision?" Zubaida hesitated, then placed the stone at Death's feet. "I choose to live," she said, "not because life is easy, but because it is worth enduring. If others can bear their burdens, so can I." For a moment, Death said nothing. Then he reached out a shadowy hand and took the stone. "Very well," he said. "But remember, Zubaida, life and death are two sides of the same coin. Cherish one, and you will find meaning in the other." As Death faded into the shadows, Zubaida felt a warmth in her chest, a flicker of light that had long been extinguished. She walked back to her village with a new sense of purpose, ready to embrace the life she had once sought to escape. Zubaida returned to her village with a fresh perspective, yet she found it difficult to adjust to the weight of her choice. The days felt slower, the world quieter, and though the flicker of hope within her had been reignited, the journey to mend her broken heart was only beginning. The first morning back, Zubaida stepped into the market square. The place buzzed with activity, as it always did, but to her, it felt different. The faces she had overlooked for years now seemed vivid with their stories. She approached Mariam, the basket weaver, whose hands never stopped moving even as they spoke. "Mariam," Zubaida began hesitantly, "it's been so long since we talked. Let me help you with these baskets." Mariam looked up, startled. The Zubaida she knew had always been distant, reclusive, her grief keeping her apart from the rest of the village. "You help me?" Mariam asked, half laughing, but her expression softened when she saw the earnestness in Zubaida's eyes. The two women sat together under the shade of a mango tree, weaving baskets and sharing stories of their past. For the first time in years, Zubaida spoke openly about the pain of losing her children, the loneliness that had consumed her. Mariam, in turn, shared her own struggles, the years of poverty, the rejection from her family when she refused to marry a man she didn't love, and the quiet ache of raising her children alone. As the hours passed, Zubaida realized something profound. Her sorrow had blinded her to the strength and resilience of those around her. Everyone carried pain, but they also carried hope, determination, and the will to keep going. Over the next few days, Zubaida began to reconnect with others in the village. She helped Mosi, the blacksmith's apprentice, by gathering firewood for the forge and listening to his dreams of becoming a master craftsman. She visited the widow who cried alone at night and brought her a bundle of fresh herbs and a promise to visit regularly. Slowly but surely, Zubaida found herself becoming a part of the community again, no longer a ghost in her own life. One afternoon, as Zubaida walked through the fields beyond the village, she saw a group of children playing under the shade of a baobab tree. Their laughter was infectious, a reminder of the innocence and joy she had long forgotten. Among them was a young boy named Kofi, whose bright eyes and mischievous grin reminded her of her son. "Come play with us," Kofi called, waving her over. Zubaida hesitated, her heart twisting with a mix of grief and longing, but then she smiled and joined the children, letting their laughter wash over her like rain on parched soil. For the first time in years, she felt a lightness in her chest, a release from the chains of her sorrow. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Zubaida sat outside her hut, gazing at the stars. She thought about the stone she had returned to death, the weight of it still lingering in her memory. She had borrowed death, held it in her hands, and come back to life with a deeper understanding of what it meant to live. Life was not easy. It was a constant struggle, a balancing act between pain and joy, loss and love. But it was also beautiful in its imperfections, a gift to be cherished, not cast aside. As the days turned into weeks, Zubaida became a source of strength and wisdom for the village. People came to her for advice, comfort, and companionship. Drawn to the quiet resilience she now carried, she was no longer the woman who had been forgotten by the gods. She was Zubaida, a survivor, a healer, a storyteller who reminded others of the power of hope. One night, as she sat by the fire with Mariam and a few others, Zubaida began to tell them the tale of her journey to the spirit forest. She spoke of the ancient baobab tree, the shadowy figure of death, and the black stone that had changed her life. "Death asked me why I should be taken when others cling to life," Zubaida said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "And I realized something that I had forgotten. Life is a gift, even when it feels like a burden. It is in our struggles that we find our strength, and in our pain that we discover our purpose." The villagers listened in awe, their eyes glistening with tears. Zubaida's story became a legend, passed down through generations as a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. Years later, when Zubaida's time finally came and death returned to claim her, she greeted him with a smile. "I am ready now," she said, "not because I sought you, but because I have lived fully." Death nodded, his shadowy form still and solemn. "You have learned well, Zubaida. Life and death are but two halves of the same journey." As she faded into the embrace of eternity, Zubaida's spirit lingered in the hearts of those she had touched, her story a beacon of hope for all who heard it.